But I think that brings me back to kind of the original purpose for this was Tom Brady's comments about the NFL being mediocre. And I believe that is to be true. I believe we see player mistakes. I think we see lack of player understanding for situational football. I think we see coaches make mistakes in ways that we haven't in a long, long time, or maybe ever. And it's all due to some of the reduction in practice time, in padded practice time, in training camp time. You know, you're going to play, you got 17 games, 18 weeks of the regular season, and I believe they can have 12 or 13 padded practices all year long. How do you develop an offensive lineman if he only gets the gameplay in 12 padded practices? How does Kenny Pickett get to understand the real detailed, nuanced understanding of when a receiver is going to be in a certain place if we don't put the pads on, jam that receiver at the line of scrimmage, force him to run this route when he's been rerouted, and fight to get into the spot where he's supposed to get on the field? How's all that supposed to happen? So that lends itself to this mediocre play that we are seeing. So Tom Brady is absolutely correct. And based on what I've seen in my coaching internships, and based on the conversations that I've had with coaches, almost to a man, when I start this kind of conversation with a coach during my internships, they would all say, "Oh man, it's not like back in your day." So they quickly would just, without any fight, recognize things are different. And I was doing one of my coaching internships, and we had played a preseason game, and one of the players in our room had difficulty scooping a fumble. So, I'm on the sideline, I'm taking notes. I'm like, well, we got to do a fumble drill during this week of practice. So, number one, we had to wait until we had the pads on to do this drill. Because, even in training camp, it's not pads every day. So we got, okay, let's find a padded day. Okay, let's script that into practice. And then so we had to go through this drill where you fall on the ball, but you don't fall on your chest or your stomach because the pile is going to get on top of you. You cradle it sideways and you slide into this. And the coach who I'm working with says, "Man, I don't want to get anybody hurt." I'm like, "Dude, we just failed at recovering a fumble during the game. That's a missed opportunity for a big play. You're playing a playoff game, and if somebody doesn't know how to recover a fumble, you're going to lose that game. So we got to do this." We did the drill, and someone got hurt. I was like, "Oh my God."
No. Are you serious?
Yeah. So that was the last drill suggestion that was implemented that training camp. It was like, wow, this guy didn't even know how to fall and recover a fumble, and he hurt himself. It wasn't like we were piling on top. You roll the ball on the ground. He's got to chase the ball, slide down, and cradle the football. And he managed to hurt himself. So that's when I was like, okay, it's more than just these coaches saying things are different and these players aren't the same. Because of the lack of padded practices, because of all the lack of physical work, these guys don't understand the basics of falling. That's why, Tua was getting blasted, because even in college football, the trickle-down effect of less padded practices has gotten down to college football. So you don't have those situations where you learn how to take a hit and learn how to get blasted, but keep your head up so your head doesn't bang in the ground. These little things that Tua has learned this offseason due to some like Taekwondo training and MMA training.
Right. Jiu-jitsu.
But he didn't learn that as a football player, because football, they don't play enough football to learn how to play football, which sounds crazy, but it's true.
You've got to condition the body for contact. And the Steelers have understood that probably more than any team, right? From Cowher to Tomlin. I feel like the practices in Pittsburgh and just doing some training camp tours, it's just different in Pittsburgh. Even now with these limited padded practices that you get, he takes full advantage of it. And you look at his players, I mean, they're playing in these preseason games. The starters are in there a lot. And that I think there is a connection. The Steelers win these crazy games that, can drive people nuts because it's not aesthetically fun to watch, but they're conditioned physically to win a different game. They're playing a different game. And it's probably so tough for Mike Tomlin to even do what he can do in 2023. But is there something to that? Just condition the body for contact. And I don't think the players would ever sit down at the table in the next CBA and say, yeah, give us more padded practices. but it probably would help the players themselves if they had more padded practices.
Yeah, Tomlin said every time we wear pads in training camp, we're going to tackle to the ground, which they did. So that I think that makes you a more conditioned athlete. It makes you a better tackling team, but it teaches you how to tackle and still keep yourself safe because you're doing this at practice. Last year, the Denver Broncos, Nathaniel Hackett was the coach. They didn't do one single tackling drill in all of training camp. And then you're going to ask these guys to go out there and play football full speed in the opening week of the season. They haven't tackled to the ground yet. You're doing your team a disservice when you do that. So, yeah, these philosophies don't necessarily line up with getting the best out of players, not preparing them to play high-level football, but also preparing them to take care of themselves. The tough skin that I developed in training camp carried throughout the season for me. And if you don't ever develop that, with the only 12 padded practices during the season, you're never going to get that. So each game, you're going to be in the training room the next week, beat up and bruised and with all kinds of things going wrong because you never toughened yourself for the rigors of football.